It's a cool October evening, and I'm sitting in a Baptist Sunday school classroom in La Mesa. I'm 30 years old, surrounded by high school, homeschool, debate students. We're brainstorming positions on current events. First up, has FEMA made an effective response to Hurricane Helene? The coach peers over his laptop. Who knows what FEMA is? I know it's federal, ventures a kid to my left who can't be more than 14. It's federal, so no. The room erupts in laughter, and suddenly I'm sitting in that kid's chair, feeling the adrenaline pulse through his chest. I've been here before, 14 and surrounded by peers in an insular space, every sentence laden with opportunity and risk. Just like this kid, I reached for safe jokes, unconsciously feeling out the shape of our shared assumptions. Then, as now, jabs at the federal government would always land. If you're surprised San Diego has enough Christian homeschoolers to support a debate scene, let me tell you, there is a whole alternate universe operating underneath your noses. Homeschooling had its mainstream moment in COVID, but evangelical Christians are the OGs, and enough of them love public speaking to sustain a national league run entirely by parent coaches. This organization is called STOA, and I am one of its lost children, class of 2012. After 12 years away, I've returned with a terrible secret. I'm now a godless liberal yuppie. Through recent therapy work, I've also realized that I'm dependent on external validation. And I want that to change. So I've come here undercover, heart pounding, blood pressure through the roof, on a mission to overcome some biblical baggage. Some folks leave the church in style. They flame out in an epic crisis of faith, become dancers at the Pink Pony Club, maybe start an ex-evangelical podcast. Not me. I hung on to Christianity for years. It felt like my only cultural foundation, even if I didn't really believe it, and I wanted to belong. When I prayed, it felt like I was speaking into nothing. But I was hungry for approval, and I got it by conforming to the expectations of the adults around me, all homeschool parents. Odd as it may seem, debate was the epicenter of my spiritual foundation. It was the place I received the most affirmation, ironically for talking about ideas like original sin, hell, and the depravity of man. To conform, I had to internalize a form of self-loathing. Christianity taught me to doubt myself, to be ashamed of emotions and like desire and anger, and to disassociate instead of feeling them. Even after I left the faith, these values were still packed away in my head. I would trip over them occasionally, like boxes in a dim storage unit. So last month, I decided to revisit my old community. I wanted to unpack these half-buried beliefs, to re-examine them and decide which to keep. A quick internet search revealed that although my old group had gone dormant, a new club called Ex Nihilo now meets in a nearby church. The name means out of nothing in Latin. It's a reference to the passage in Genesis where God creates the world by speaking, which I'll admit is a clever touch for a speech and debate club. Even better, it's run by a family that I knew when I was a student, the Burtons. Mr. Burton answers my email, and a week later, we shake hands in the church foyer. When I thank him for his hospitality, his reply catches me off guard. "You're royalty," he says. "People still talk about you." It's the first of several biographical details to emerge ex nihilo. When Mr. Burton introduces me to the younger parents, I discover that at some point after graduation, I unknowingly became a national champion. Although the closest I came to a title was third place, it seems unwise to contradict Mr. Burton in his domain. The conversation turns to my occupation. Mr. Burton has heard that I'm a business owner, which is news to me. And as I clarify my employee status, a shadow of disappointment flickers across his face. When I disclose my affiliation with PBS, the following pause makes me wonder if I've jeopardized my newfound royalty. We're all relieved when another dad appears. The Burtons introduce him as Mr. Hall, and I introduce myself as David. "We've met," he says. I search my memory for this man, and he does not appear. He explains that his son joined the year after I graduated and is still close with my younger brother. Mr. Hall seems a little hurt that I don't remember him, and I'm still feeling guilty about it when that freshman mini-me makes his joke about federal incompetence. It absolutely kills. And as the room explodes, I look over and wonder if this kid's crush is here. Mine was back then. I originally joined debate because Eva James suggested it and because it guaranteed that I would see her every week. Eva played volleyball, wore her red hair down her back, and had this way of reflexively touching you as she laughed at your jokes that was simply too much for a 14-year-old boy to handle. I peaked during the debate practice we spent passing a gum wrapper back and forth, adding small drawings that embellished on the previous action. A police helicopter shooting a cowboy, lassoing a T-Rex, chasing a motorcycle. Honestly, some of my best work. As the laughter fades, I look over at this boy and feel a surge of recognition, affection, helplessness. I'm drifting in a memory, and I can't say anything. Meanwhile, another student has found a summary of FEMA's objectives for the hurricane response. They include words like equity and climate resilience, at which the whole room groans. Mr. Burton weighs in. Well, the liberal media are saying that FEMA is doing a great job. But your judges are going to be homeschool parents, advises the coach, and they'll have a different opinion. It's the perfect distillation of a lesson I learned quickly in this community. Tell them what they want to hear. The league we competed in, the tournaments we attended, the website that accumulated our scores and national rankings were all created and maintained entirely through the volunteer labor of homeschool parents. They didn't make this massive lift just to keep our weekends full. These folks were raising us to be right-wing culture warriors, the next generation of legislators, court clerks, and cable news pundits. They rewarded those of us who most successfully conformed to this image with wins delivered on handwritten ballots. After the tournaments, we'd receive photocopies of these ballots and head to Denny's. Picture a diner full of homeschoolers poring over loose sheets of paper, joking and commiserating through mouthfuls of pancake. Long past midnight, I'd still be riding the current of the awards ceremony, looking for the keys to victory in the cursive of some middle-aged church ladies. In front of me, a stack 80 pages tall, each representing a person with fractional power over my status in this community. At 16, I couldn't have put this in words. I just knew how it felt to hear my name called. The burst of adrenaline as Eva hugged me. The unreality of an entire auditorium of peers on their feet applauding me, the last person on stage. For years, my ballot sat in a blue accordion file folder in my parents' garage. There must have been several hundred pages stuffed inside, and perhaps Mr. Hall's name was written on one of them. I feel bad for not remembering Mr. Hall. But then again, I've probably forgotten hundreds of faces. The parents invest so much in this community. I wonder if they realize how peripheral they become in the students' experience of it. Judging by the faces in the audience tonight, some of these parents could be in their early 40s, which means I'm now closer to them than the students. Looking around, I feel simultaneously amazed at their dedication and frustrated by the ideology that fuels it. When Mr. Hall joins us during a short break, Mr. Burton asks him how he's holding up. There have been some sleepless nights. Without context, it sounds like an awful week. Perhaps one of his family members has been hospitalized. He leaves for a drink of water, and Mr. Burton looks over. We've had a bit of a kerfuffle over tournament scheduling, he explains. It turns out it's a dry year for the league. Although more Californians are homeschooling than ever in the wake of the pandemic, many accept charter funding. In Mr. Burton's words, they're on the government dole, which makes them ineligible to compete. With fewer families and resources, tournaments scheduled too close together compete for participants, and this is the source of Mr. Hall's insomnia. I ask Mr. Burton whether they've considered loosening the eligibility requirements. He shrugs. I don't want to feed the beast. As the debate practice begins, I think about the implication of his words. This community readily sacrifices growth to maintain a consistent ideology. It purports to teach critical thinking and the pursuit of truth, but it insulates its members from opposing views, so they never have to question shared assumptions. When I was a student, it rewarded me for parroting those assumptions back. Your judges will be homeschool parents. Those parents handed me beliefs like so many paper ballots, and I filed them away, eager for approval. Debate taught me to speak, but not to listen. To listen well, I had to accept that all my truths could topple at a word. It took me years to understand this, and I'm still learning it. I learned it when my parents voted for Trump the first time. I learned it again when my wife's father went to prison for abusing her baby sister. He was a pastor and an active presence in our community. One conversation, and my confidence in my own perception disappeared. A few more conversations, and it began to sound like the people around me were grieving his absence more than her pain. I wanted to stop listening after that, and for years I did. My godless, liberal, yuppie friends usually expect me to hate where I come from, perhaps now more than ever. When I visited Ex Nihilo, I thought I might, but I've realized that I'm past that now, partly because of something they gave me. Ex Nihilo means out of nothing. It's a reference to Genesis 1. God speaks, and the world leaps into being. But there's another layer of meaning here, possibly unintentional. Our parents wouldn't admit it, but they also created a world out of nothing. They held it together with Monday night debate practices, volunteer labor, and handwritten ballots. I don't belong to anything like it anymore. Or at least I didn't, until tonight. I'm not gonna lie, I still love external validation. But I've stopped molding myself into what I think people want me to be, whether they're homeschool parents or you godless liberal yuppies. I accept myself now, even when other people don't. In other words, I've claimed authorship of my life. By speaking, I create a world.
David Hutchinson, ladies and gentlemen. David.